So I am live today to talk about birth positions. The most common birth position that we give birth in is on our backs. And that is not really the easiest or the optimal position to give birth in for a multitude of different reasons. But first off, let's talk about why we give birth on our backs, because it isn't the easiest position to give birth in. So one of the reasons that we give birth, one of the reasons that it's theorised that we give birth on our backs is because of Louis XIV, who was a French king. He had 22 children, not from the same person, from various different wives and mistresses. And he had a real desire to be able to see these wives and mistresses give birth to his children. So the theory is that he was royal. He didn't want to be on his hands and knees because women would stand up to give birth. And he was not going to get on his hands and knees to look upwards to be able to see his children being born. So he insisted that all of his children were born with his wives and mistresses on their backs, legs akimbo, so that he got a better view. And that became popularised by the barber surgeons of the time. So that's one of the reasons that people think that we now give birth on our backs, because that became popular. To be quite honest, the main reason we do give birth on our backs is because it's easier for everybody else. It's easier for everybody else to see what's going on, not necessarily because it's the easiest thing for us to be giving birth on our backs. So the optimal position really to give birth in are upright, forward and open birthing positions, not on our backs. Now the reason that it's slightly harder to give birth on our backs is because of the pelvis. So this bit here, which is the sacrum and the tailbone, the bottom of your spine, this flexes and moves. Now when we give birth on our backs, like this, the sacrum can't move. It's trapped against the bed, which means that it can't flex and move. It can't create space in the outlet of the pelvis where your baby is coming out. So when we have upright birthing positions, we enable the sacrum to flex and move, which creates more space in the outlet of the pelvis, which is going to make it easier for baby to be born. One of the other reasons that upright positions are easier is because we also benefit from gravity. So when you're lying on your back, giving birth to your baby, babies navigate the pelvis and they kind of make this U-bend maneuver. Now you can see if my hand is a baby and we are being born, doing this U-bend maneuver means that you are going against gravity. So being upright, although you're still making the same maneuver, you're navigating the pelvis in the same way, it is far easier because you're benefiting from gravity. The other reason is, again, gravity encourages baby's head to press against the top of the cervix, and this stimulates oxytocin. So freedom of movement and being able to get into whatever position feels most comfortable for you is better. Now, that's not to say you can't lie on your back if you feel like you have the urge to, but there are a couple of positions that I would recommend which are more side-lying rather than lying flat on your back, and that includes having an epidural. You don't have to be lying flat on your back. So when we think about optimal fetal positioning, there are certain things, certain positions that you can try during pregnancy to get baby into a good position. And then you can also use those during labour to help labour along if labour stalls. Labour can stall for lots of different reasons. Sometimes it's the environment. Sometimes it's because you're dehydrated and run out of energy because you haven't been eating and you haven't been drinking. Sometimes it can be because of baby's position. Sometimes it's because you haven't gone for a wee and your bladder is literally obstructing baby's descent through the pelvis because your bladder is full. So going to the toilet is really important. But sometimes it is baby's position. So some of these birth positions that I'm going to go through are great for during pregnancy to get baby into an optimal position, but they're also great for using in labour. If labour stalls, we don't know why. We've tried a few different things and maybe it is baby's position and baby's got a bit stuck. So there is an optimal position for baby to start off in when you go into labour. And this is for most people, it's not for everybody, because everybody's pelvises are different shapes and sizes. However, for a lot of people, the optimal position for your baby is for your baby to be head down, with the back of their head and their spine facing towards the left of your belly button. Now, the reason this is the optimal position is because it means the widest part of your baby's head matches the widest part of your pelvis. Now, the inlet of your pelvis, the top of your pelvis, where baby is going to start descending into, is widest hip to hip. And as we navigate the pelvis and we go through the pelvis, then mid-pelvis is widest diagonally. And then as the baby comes out, it's widest from tailbone to pubic bone, which means the widest part of the pelvis changes as the baby descends through the pelvis. So if we start off in this position with baby's head down, back of their head and spine facing towards the left of the belly button, that means that we are matching the widest part of the head with the widest part of the pelvis, and then they rotate as they descend, which means they continue to match the widest part of the pelvis, creating optimal space for them to descend, which minimises the chances of them getting stuck. So some of these positions that I'm going to go through are great for using in pregnancy to get baby into that optimal position. We see a lot more back-to-back babies now than we ever did before, and that's probably because we live more sedentary lifestyles. And again, for some people, a back-to-back baby is maybe the optimal position for them and the shape of their pelvis. But for a lot of people, they find that back-to-back babies, it does cause a more intense labour. It can make a slower labour, and that's because baby doesn't have as much space to navigate the pelvis. So a back-to-back baby is where baby's spine is in line with your spine. So they're facing out towards your belly button rather than facing towards your spine. And that happens because potentially we do live more sedentary lifestyles. Now, if you think about, we spend a lot of time at desk, sitting down, we come home, we watch Netflix on the sofa, or at least that's what I do. And when we sit down for long periods, particularly on sofas, we tend to slouch, and that causes our pelvis to kind of do this. The heaviest part of your baby is the back of their head and their spine. If you're in this kind of position for a long time, repetitively, it potentially encourages baby out of that optimal position into a back-to-back position. So it is a good idea to try and do some of these positions during pregnancy so that you are encouraging baby into an optimal position and then keeping them in that position. So one thing that I recommend all of my clients is to have a birthing ball. Birthing balls are fantastic, particularly when you get a lot bigger. It becomes quite uncomfortable to sit on sofas for long periods of time, and sitting on a birthing ball actually can feel more comfortable. But also, birthing ball is fantastic for keeping that mobility. You can use it during labour, which is fantastic for all that movement. You can get in lots of different positions on a birthing ball. So one thing I would say, if you're going to get a birthing ball, is to get the right size. It is not one size fits all. I do have on my Instagram a little chart to show you what size birthing ball depending on your height. But as a guide, I would say if you have a birthing ball and you want to check that it's the right size, when you sit on it, your knees should be in line with your hips or lower than your hips, which means your pelvis is in neutral or forward tilting. What we don't want is the ball to be too small, because that means your knees end up higher than your hips, your pelvis tilts backwards, and then again we're encouraging baby out of that optimal position. So just check your birthing ball size, make sure it's appropriately inflated so that it is not too small, and that you are counteracting all of that good posture and optimizing baby's position. So one technique that I teach my clients is rebozo. So a rebozo is a large Mexican scarf or shawl. So this is my rebozo. We'll move back a bit so you can see it. This is my rebozo. You don't have to get a proper rebozo, but I wanted to get a proper one. If you do want to get a proper one, then go and have a look at Sophie Messager. She's French. It looks like messenger. Messager. Her website, she sells rebozos, which she imports ethically from Mexico. You can use a pashmina or a large scarf if you want to. So rebozo, there are lots of techniques that we can use a rebozo for. Latin American and Mexican midwives use them during pregnancy to get baby into a good position, and they also use them during labour to get baby into good position, and also use it as a comfort measure. So one technique that I teach my clients is rebozo sifting. So I don't know if you can see it. There we go. So rebozo sifting is where you get on all fours. You make sure that your hands are nice and flat. Your knees are flat on the floor, slightly further back. Your partner will stand behind you, and then very carefully drape the rebozo or the shawl around your tummy, tucking it in nice and neatly at the top of your bump and right down to the bottom of your bump. Make sure it's nice and smooth, get rid of all the creases, and then they want to kind of hold the rebozo in this kind of hammock position, making sure that it's all nice and smooth, and then very gently they want to be doing this kind of sifting motion. Now it's really gentle, we're not doing it really vigorously. The idea is to do it very gently, kind of lift to take some of the weight off the bump, and then do this sifting motion. What it does is it's going to help work on that fascial layer, which is the layer of connective tissue under your skin and on top of your muscles. Relax that. It's going to get your belly nice and relaxed. It's going to relax all of those muscles. It's going to enable baby to move into that optimal position. Now, if you think again about gravity, when you're on all fours, you're in this position. Again, heaviest part of baby is the back of their head and their spine. You're going to relax everything and create space for baby to get into that optimal position. So this is a really good one that I would recommend trying during labour if labour has stalled. I would also use it during pregnancy from 35 weeks to get baby into a good position. It feels really, really nice. The other one that you can do is shaking the apple trees. I don't have a photo for that one, but that is where the pregnant person gets on their knees, leans over a birthing ball, and then the birth partner drapes the rebozo over the hips and the tops of the glutes, bunches the rebozo at the hips, slightly squeezes into the hips, and then this one is a much more vigorous jiggle. And we're going to relax all of that tension in the hips and the pelvis, again, create space for baby to rotate, and you can do that for a couple of minutes. So that's a really, really nice one, again, if you want to do that during pregnancy. So the next birthing position is a forward leaning inversion. Now lots of people have heard of the forward leaning inversion. So this one is the forward leaning inversion. So when you do a forward leaning inversion, you want to kneel on a sofa or a nice low surface. You don't want to be too high up. You lower yourself forward until your forearms are flat on the floor. Your head should be hanging in between your arms, and you want to stay in that upside down position for 30 seconds. Then we want to get back up into a kneeling position and stay upright in the kneeling position for 30 seconds before we get up and move around. Now this position is really, really good to do during pregnancy to get baby into an optimal position. It's really good to do if you have a breech baby. So if your baby is feet first or bum first, doing forward leaning inversions is a really great way of rotating baby and getting them into an optimal position. You can also use it to get a posterior baby to turn anterior. So if they're back to back, to try and get them the right way. The way that a forward leaning inversion works is when you lean forward and go upside down, baby disengages slightly from the pelvis and it creates space. And then when you get back up into the kneeling position and you stay in the kneeling position for 30 seconds, you allow time for baby to settle back into the pelvis, and again, try and get into that optimal position. If you're trying to turn a breech baby, I would recommend doing several forward leaning inversions in one day, maybe an hour apart. But it is a really good daily exercise to do during pregnancy to encourage baby into an optimal position. One thing that I do get asked by clients quite a lot is there any chance that you could encourage baby into a breech position doing forward leaning inversions? And no. Because if you think the heaviest part of your baby is their head, doing the forward leaning inversions is going to encourage them to be head down. It's not going to make them rotate the wrong way up. One thing I would say with the forward leaning inversions is there's a few contraindications. I wouldn't recommend it if you have heartburn or you have acid reflux, because that would be really unpleasant. You shouldn't be doing it if you have glaucoma, hypertension, or if you're at risk of stroke. I would also say don't do them if you're on your own. I struggle getting out for forward leaning inversion and I'm not pregnant. I really do think that if you're pregnant, you'll really struggle to get out of a forward leaning inversion without some help. And if you do get lightheaded, you need somebody around. So I wouldn't advise that you do them on your own. Always make sure that there's somebody with you while you're doing a forward leaning inversion. So the next one is a side lying release. Now, side lying release is a position that I have heard lots of midwives do who know about it, who sing its praises. They have done a side lying release when they're supporting somebody, their labour's stalled, they're getting prepped to go into theatre for an emergency C-section. They try the side lying release while they're waiting for the theatre to be ready, and it just relieves whatever dystocia was there, and baby is born quite easily afterwards, and it avoids them having the unplanned C-section. So a side lying release is this one here. I'm trying to get it to focus so that you can see it. So again, you can do this during pregnancy to get baby into a good position, and you can also do this one during labour if labour has stalled. So the side lying release, to do that, you want to lie on the bed, parallel to the end, and shuffle up as close to the edge of the bed as possible without falling off. So your belly's probably going to hang over the edge of the bed. Now you want to rest your head on your arm. Make sure your shoulders are stacked one above the other so that you're not leaning backwards and you're not rolling forwards off the bed, and the same with your hips, one stacked above the other. And then you get your birth partner to stand in front of the bed in front of you to stop you from falling off the bed, because that wouldn't be good. They're going to put a stabilizing hand on your hip and kind of press a little bit, and then you want to get your top leg, extend it as far forward as possible, as comfortable, and drop it over the side of the bed. And what that's going to do, it's going to create a nice stretch in your hip, in the ligaments. It's going to create space in the pelvis. It's going to potentially relieve any dystocia and enable baby to rotate into a more optimal position. So if you're doing this during pregnancy to get baby into a good position, then you want to stay lying with your leg hanging over the edge of the bed with your birth partner holding onto your hip, stabilizing you for 10 minutes. I know it's quite a long time. 10 minutes. Once you've done it for 10 minutes, then you can get up. If you're doing it during labour, then 3 contractions. Okay, you lie on the bed with your leg hanging over the side of the bed for 3 contractions. Once you've done your 10 minutes or your 3 contractions, get up, lie on the other side and repeat the same thing. Shoulders stacked above each other, hips stacked above each other. Get the top leg, hang it over the bed, dangle it, and then stay like that for 10 minutes or 3 contractions. It's really important that you do both sides so that you're balancing the pelvis. So this is a really, really good one to do. If you've had an epidural, you can still do a side lying release, but I would modify it. So instead of your birth partner standing in front of you, stabilizing you and stopping you from rolling off, get them to push a chair up against the bed. They will sit on the chair. They will help you move your leg, because if you've had an epidural, you can't move your leg because it'll be a dead weight. Get them to help you move your leg over the edge of the bed, and then they want to drape it over their lap. It will just stop your leg from overextending, because if you have an epidural, you can't feel your leg. We don't want to overextend and damage and hurt any ligaments in the pelvis. So they just drape your leg over their lap. You still get that stretch, and you avoid overextending and damaging any ligaments in the pelvis. The next one is an exaggerated lateral pose. So this one is one that I suspect most of you probably sleep in. Every time I mention this to clients, they go, yeah, that's how I sleep. And it's because it's the most comfortable way to sleep. So this is an exaggerated lateral pose. I'm trying to get it to focus. So again, this is a great one to do during pregnancy if you just want to feel comfortable. You can do this during labour. This is a great position if you've had an epidural. Instead of lying flat on your back, which is, again, not the optimal position, really. Lying like this can be a really great option instead. Or if you're just exhausted, you feel like you need to lie down, then do the exaggerated lateral pose. So you want to lie on your left side because you want to encourage baby to rotate towards the left. And that's why we say lie on your left side during pregnancy. You make a nest of pillows under your head, under your bump, and then you can either get a peanut ball or a pillow, put it in between your legs, and then you get your right leg, because you're lying on the left side, so your top leg is your right leg. You want to bring it up as high as possible and forward and bend it. And it's a little bit like the side lying release. Again, we're just creating space in the pelvis, encouraging baby to rotate into that optimal position. And this one, you can stay in that position for as long as you want. There's no limit how long you can stay in that position. It's a really, really good position to try if you're really exhausted.
Get that. Could you try again?
Sorry, Siri's talking to me. Or if you just want to lie down, if you had an epidural, it's a really, really good position to try. So another position that I teach my clients is this one, which is counter pressure. So for counter pressure, this is a technique which I would advise that you go on YouTube and get your birth partner to watch a video on how to do counter pressure properly, so that they know how to do the technique properly and safely. But essentially what we're doing with counter pressure is creating pressure on the pelvis to change the shape of the pelvis and again encourage baby to rotate. So when we do counter pressure, what we're doing is we're getting the birth partner to use the heels of their hands, and they're going to be pressing on the pelvis like this. Okay, so what they want to do is they want to use their body weight to squeeze and press on their hips while you're having a contraction. They want to hold for 60 seconds while you're having the contraction and then let go and ease off in between the contractions. So holding and pressing the hips is going to, you can see it changes the shape of the pelvis. They should follow your lead. If you're telling them to do it harder, they can do it harder. If they're doing it too hard, you tell them to ease off. But they want to use their body weight to press onto the hips. You can also do sacral pressure, and that's where they press on this bit here on the lower back. It can feel really, really nice as a comfort measure as well, but also it's going to be creating space to encourage baby to rotate. Now this one, the counter pressure, I wouldn't advise doing it longer than 20 minutes or so, just because otherwise the person giving birth will have really sore hips the next day. Birth partners may also get sore arms, but let's face it, that's not the biggest concern. But I wouldn't advise doing the counter pressure for too long. It's a really great one to do as a comfort measure, but do go and check out some videos on YouTube on how to do it safely if you are going to do counter pressure. So there are loads of other positions that you can use during labour. This one I think is a really, really good one. Going and sitting on the toilet. There are multiple reasons why sitting on the toilet is a really good idea during labour. One, it gives you privacy. You know, if you're feeling really observed, there are people coming in and out of the room, you just feel like you're being disturbed too much, disappearing into the toilet can be a really, really good idea. One of my clients on my group this week said that she, in her last birth, kept on disappearing to the toilet because she kept on getting told not to push. And so she kept on sneaking into the toilet to sneakily go and push because she was being told not to. By the way, if you're told not to push, that can be actually not quite helpful. they may tell you not to push because they'll say that you're not fully dilated yet, and they're worried about you damaging your cervix or bruising your cervix. However, sometimes we get the urge to push before we're fully dilated because your body is trying to get baby to rotate into an optimal position, and stopping that means that baby doesn't rotate into the optimal position, and then we end up with dystocia later because baby didn't get into a good position and now they're not navigating the pelvis with the most space. So I would say listen to your body if you're being told not to push. However, going on the toilet is a really good idea. It's gives you privacy. You know, you can switch the lights off. You know, give yourself that oxytocin-friendly environment. You get privacy. You're not being observed. Going and sitting on the toilet is going to encourage you to empty your bladder, which is really important. Like I said earlier, if your bladder is full, then that's going to be hindering baby navigating the pelvis. It also is just genuinely a really good position to be in. Sitting on the toilet is a really good position. You know, if you get some blocks or like a footstool to put your feet in, just to raise your knees slightly, again, so that your knees are higher than your hips, and sitting on the toilet can feel really comfortable. You can also face the cistern, so sit on the opposite way to the way you would normally sit on the toilet, and then you can lean over the back of the cistern, rest your head, and labour on the toilet. Anything I would say is if you start getting the urge to push or you feel a head, get off the toilet, because you don't want your baby to end up falling in the toilet, which has happened to people before. Another great position or technique is what I call a scarf and door squat. So in Latin America, it is really common for ropes to be hanging from the ceiling, which women use to hold onto. So birthing people hold onto the rope, get into squats, and kind of stay in that position to give birth in. Now that's not common in the UK. However, it is a really good position to try. So if you have got a rebozo or you've got a scarf with you, you can try doing this during labour. So one thing I would say before you try doing this scarf and door prop is make sure you're not choosing an external door, because if someone opens the door, you will go flying, which is obviously dangerous. So a bathroom door that you know there's nobody on the other side is safe to use. Make sure you're not using an external door. You get your rebozo or your scarf, you tie a big knot in the end, get your birth partner to flip it over the top of the door and close the door, and then they want to give it a really good yank to make sure it's not going anywhere, okay? And then you can either do what this picture is doing, which is face the door, and then hold on to the scarf, get into a squat, and then you can sway side to side, which is going to be really nice for opening up the hips and make you feel nice and comfortable. And that can be a fantastic position to give birth in. And the other way is to put your back to the door, face away from the door, hold on to the scarf, get into a squat. And I've seen lots of birth videos of people giving birth in that position as well. So this is a really nice one to try. I have seen Kemi posted about a sling, a birth sling, which is very similar to this, which is probably more supportive, which I think is a fantastic idea. And it kind of loops around you and around your back so that you can hold on to it, and it's supporting you under the arms and around the back so that you can get more support. You're less likely for it to slip through your hands and for you to fall backwards. So that's also a really fantastic one to try. The final thing that I wanted to point out is knees in, feet out. So the naked doula has coined the term Kiko, which is the same thing, knees in, calves out. But this is something for the second stage of labour. So the expulsive phase where you're getting the urge to give birth to your baby. You shouldn't be doing this in the earlier stages of labour, and I'll explain why in a minute. So the most common position for us to give birth in is being on our backs, and we are told to make our knees nice and wide to make space for our babies. And I've heard lots of midwives say this: open your legs, make space for your baby. And quite often we have our feet close together and our knees wide. Now what happens when we do that is our pelvis ends up doing this, okay? So when we have our feet together and our knees wide, so our knees are wider than our feet, our pelvis does this. Now that is narrowing the outlet of the pelvis. And if you're in the second stage of labour and you're trying to birth your baby, you are narrowing the space in the outlet of the pelvis where your baby is trying to come out. So the idea with the knees in, feet out is that you can have your knees wide or together, it doesn't really matter, but we want to make sure that our feet are wider than our knees. So what happens when we do that is this. So we are maximizing the space in the outlet of the pelvis. We are widening the outlet of the pelvis and making extra space for baby to come out and be born. So we can do this knees in, feet out position in any position. You could be on your back with your feet, with your knees wide. Just move your feet wider than your knees, okay? Or you can have your knees together, but just make sure your feet are wider than your knees. You can do that on all fours. Again, you could have your knees nice and wide, but just make sure that you're moving your feet wider than your knees. You can also do this on your side. So if you're lying on your side and you've got a peanut ball between your feet, just make sure that your knees are closer together and your feet are nice and wide with the peanut ball in between your feet, again, to widen the space in the outlet of the pelvis. Or if you have no ball and somebody is supporting your leg while you are side lying, again, just make sure that they're just gently rotating your leg so that your feet are wider than your knees. Now, one of the reasons that we don't want to do this in the earlier stages of labour is because if you notice, as we increase the space in the outlet of the pelvis, we are decreasing the space in the inlet of the pelvis. And that is going to hinder baby's descent if we are earlier stages of labour. So we don't really want to be doing this too early on during labour. This is for the later stages of labour. Those are all the positions that I was going to talk through. Does anybody have any questions for me before I finish today? I'll give you a couple of seconds just in case anyone wants to type anything in the chat and ask me any questions. While I'm waiting, just to let you know that all of these cards are cards that I sell on Etsy. There are actually 15 different birth positions. There are descriptions on the back on how to do these positions and any contraindications. These are really, I mean, I know they're my cards, but I do think they're really, really fantastic. They come in a little plastic case. They're perfect for your birth bag. So if you wanted a set, go and have a look at my Instagram profile. There's a link to it in my Instagram profile. If nobody has any questions, feel free to give me a follow on Instagram. It's Better Birth UK. If you want to ask me anything privately, you can drop me a message on here or on Instagram. I'm always happy to answer questions. And I hope that you found this really useful, and good luck with the births of your babies.